do that. Brilliant. Right. So welcome everybody to this session, which I may have called a couple of different things online when I've been advertising it. But basically, it is hopefully an interactive discussion about career development or career opportunities in CBT. It is a subject that I'm very passionate about, and I don't think there are enough kind of structures out there for people to follow. It can seem quite all or nothing. So today, really, I'm hoping that you probably go away with more questions than answers. That is my intention. So it's not that I'm going to tell you everything, because I just want to feed a few ideas and sort of loosen your thinking, just to recognize that there are a lot more options available to us. Hi. Just reading the chat. There's always more options available than we often recognize, and there's lots of reasons for that. Often we might just get stuck in a mindset and in the demands of the job, and we don't really have that time to stand back and think about the bigger picture. So hopefully tonight will be that opportunity for you. So, right, I have got a few slides. It's not overkill with PowerPoint. If you've ever been to any of my training, you'll know that I try and minimize, but just use the slides as discussion points, really, just to sort of emphasize what we're talking about. So I think it might be useful at this point in time, before we sort of like get started. I'm going to put the first slide up, but which I will share with you. Hopefully you can see that all right. Can you see the screen, that lovely sunshine, that just how it was in the Midlands today? So as I say, this is all about, it's a space for us to consider career opportunities as a CBT therapist. So before I move on, I think this will be a good opportunity to get you to tell me what you hope to get out of this session. Now, let me just stop sharing already. Now, I know there's only a kind of a small number of you, but it might still be nice if I put you into breakout rooms so you feel a little bit more comfortable sort of sharing. And what's brought you here tonight? What are your questions? What are your concerns? What are your issues? And what would you like to take away from this? And, I will put you into breakout rooms just for about 2 or 3 minutes, just to get you loosened up. And then when you come back, if each group can I'll only do 2 groups, but if you could just tell me, what's on your mind. Is that okay? Brill. So just bear with me. Hi there.
Hi, sorry.
I'm just going to put you in a breakout room, so you might be just whisked away in a second.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I will just create 2 rooms. Hopefully that will be all. Let's have a look. 9 of you.
You can call me Muti, please.
Sorry?
You can call me Muti, M-U-T-I.
Oh, Muti. Okay, lovely. Thanks, Muti. I'm going to just create 2 rooms, have a little chat, talk about what your expectations are of tonight. And then when you come back after a couple of minutes, we'll discuss those and see if, it's going to meet your expectations. So see you in a couple of minutes. Okay, so welcome back. So tell me what you were discussing. What were the sort of points that you raised in your different groups?
I don't mind saying something.
Oh, sorry, Hayley. Hayley, you go.
Classic being on online. We generally just kind of wanting to know what opportunities are out there. Joy and we're still training. Joy's coming to the end in December. I finish in March, and I think it's just knowing, what's out there, and because I think it feels as though NHS and IAP services is the only way. Even I know there's private, but I think just thinking ahead to know more about what we can do and kind of break the monotony of just working in IAPT.
Okay, great. That's good. We will definitely be considering that. Anything else? Great. Well, you were going to say something, Muti?
Yes, please. I've just I was discussing with my group. I've just started CBT, master in CBT therapy, and I was told about you during the last 2 weeks ago conference, because I'm struggling to get placement and to have people who can guide me on how to be able to get them to work towards the BABC accreditation.
Accreditation.
And I need a lot of experience also and
right.
training opportunity.
We will
to
definitely be
continue.
talking about some of these broader issues about, barriers to moving forward. And I guess that, when we come on to it, we can discuss it, can't we? But yeah, thank you for that. So let's move on. Like I say, I've only got a handful of slides. I just want to kind of, present a few ideas. But like I say, they're certainly that's what they are, they're ideas. And let's see where that takes us then. So just going back to the screen, it's come back up, has it? Yeah. Okay. So when we consider I know that it depends what view you've got on your Zoom, on your laptops, but sometimes the faces, if you've got the gallery view, it might cover the slides, but don't worry, I'll explain what's on the content of the slides. So this slide basically just outlines a few of the main pathways to become a CBT therapist. And I've shared this previously on like various social media sites. And it's something I always, sort of emphasize when I'm doing consultations with anybody who is either already a CBT therapist or wants to become one. It is a long pathway, it's a long road, no matter what pathway you take. And we're highly skilled at the end of this, and on the way as well, if you consider all of those layers to, what is required. I think, sometimes we can forget that we are highly skilled. And in this day and age, actually, if we think about the main provider of CBT, which is IAPT in the UK, clearly, then we think about the policy that drives, the workforce planning and succession planning and trying to meet the needs of the nation. We know we're falling short, and we have done right from the start of the IAPT enterprise. We're, at one point, I think they were suggesting that we were meeting the original targets, but it's a movable feast, and it's certainly changed. So in other words, we are highly skilled, we are sought after, and it is a buyer's market. And we should remember that I think that's the right way around. You know what I mean? That they are after us. We can actually, or we should be. I know there are factors that dictate what jobs we go for or what lifestyle and all of that, but basically it's a competitive market, i.e. that we are the resource that all the organizations currently want. That leaves a risk, of course, doesn't it, that the IAPT in particular is starting to deplete. And we know the reasons why, and we can talk about that. But the main reason is sort of the workload and the stress of that kind of job over long term. But that still leaves this kind of problem, doesn't it? That if we have high attrition from the NHS, then it's going to continue to sort of like diminish, isn't it? We're not training therapists fast enough at the moment, and more money is going into training. So in terms of opportunities to become a CBT therapist, I'm hopeful that will actually get a little bit easier in the years coming. Let me just check this chat question that I haven't missed something. training CBT, what is your background? You can carry on that chat if you like. There's a question being asked there. I will actually, it might fit in nicely with the next slide, because these are some of the different core professions. I've missed social work out on here, I realised earlier today. Social work is clearly one of the core professions as well, as is general practice, so GPs and, you know, some other medical professionals, psychiatry as well. And these are some of the main mental health core professions then, that with that can lead you into, you know, your training, and then you can become a CBT therapist. Now, these two that I've highlighted up here, the counselling psychology, but mainly the clinical psychology doctorate, now there are more of those courses where the minimum training standards of the BABCP are included within their curriculum. So many courses now, if you once you come out of the clinical psychology training, you are accreditable, if that makes sense. So these are just some of the different core professions. We know another pathway, one of the pathways which is the most common probably, but I don't have statistics to back this up, but I'm imagining it's the sort of PWP with the 2 years of post-qualification experience, and then going into high intensity. But, you know, we are a diverse group of people, and that's what I particularly like about the profession. So I put this up here. Don't feel stuck. We are, you know, we have a lot more choices. We have a lot more power than we perhaps think we do. And like I say, I'm trying not to undermine some of the very real challenges that as individuals that we might face, which prevent us from having the freedom to make choices all the time, or the choices that we want to make. But I don't feel stuck. There are so many opportunities. And over the past 20 years, those opportunities have actually extended beyond just IAPT, and we need to consider some of those as well. But what tends to happen is that we think that these are the two options, the only two options, or we just think of it like a, you know, it's a versus, it's one versus the other. And it's very easy to get into that mindset, isn't it, of it's all or nothing. So I either work in the NHS or I go into private practice. Now, for me, I believe, I mean, it's everybody's choice. And so whatever my views are, I don't mean to sound judgmental, but they are my views. And one of them, as ex-course director of a CBT program, obviously been very involved in training CBT therapists, and I still do a lot of private training and supervision. And it's always been my own personal belief that you really need some, you know, decent experience once you qualify before jumping straight into a private practice. That is my belief, that I think that the course is very intensive, but it doesn't prepare you to immediately deal with every kind of situation. But, you know, there isn't anywhere, it is not written in stone that you can't do that. And I have known trainees who have almost jumped straight into private practice or very quickly. And I think, you know, not trying to thwart people's choices, I just think there's sometimes a missed opportunity to sort of like actually ground yourself in the sort of bread and butter skills and presentations that come with being in a service. But yeah, so we can be blinkered, we can sort of have the all or nothing. And even within that, we might consider that NHS means IAPT only. And by far, it is the biggest provider. There's no doubt about it. But there are other services that offer CBT within the NHS, and there are non-mental health services within the NHS that offer CBT. So we can be more flexible when we think about the NHS. But private, we often have this image of private as just being a clinical caseload, where it's almost like doing an IAP job, but privately by yourself, you know, taking private patients on. But actually, when we think about it, you know, what sometimes makes the private sector or independent CBT therapy seem so appealing is because you can actually dress up the role, can't you, to suit what you are interested in. So you can actually do non-clinical activities or a range of clinical activities that go over and above just seeing patients. And I think when we're talking about burnout, it's important that we have a variety of roles within our, you know, our job. So if we think about, you know, that this list down here, you know, these are some of the things that if you're in private practice, you can kind of develop your business around, can't you? You've also got the choice of being an independent, just sole trader, where you're pretty much, you know, running the show. Or you might be an associate to somebody else's private practice where you dip in and out of that. You also might be just doing generic CBT across the board for a few different organizations, private healthcare companies, for example. Or you might want to specialize, and actually being in private practice might enable you to say, I actually just want to work with eating disorders or long-term conditions or whatever it is you're passionate about. So it's very easy to see the pull over to private practice. But again, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, because if we take this and look on this side, then often what tends to be the case is that, and this has been my gripe for years actually, is that within the IAPT, you know, system, there's a real lack of variety in career progression. If you're not interested in management, you are a little bit, you know, thwarted. I can't say the word, you know what I mean? Stumped. Because in order to get from band 7 to a band 8A, you are talking about sort of clinical lead type role, aren't you? That is the most readily available career progression point. And not everybody, and including myself, you know, that's never been the most interesting part of the job for me. So that always made me sealing out of those clinical roles, if that makes sense. But if we go to the next slide, then actually all of the variety of roles that were highlighted for private practice are available to us if we make sure we ask for them and, you know, search for opportunities within the organization. There are other opportunities, but the big but here is that they may not lead to an increase in salary, which, you know, but what they might do is give you a little bit of freed up time to be a clinical supervisor, for example, or get involved in a project or a bit of research or building a pathway. IAPT's always, you know, implementing new sort of projects. There's often money in pots to develop pathways, for example. So just opening our eyes to, if I do feel kind of trapped in IAPT, is there anything I can ask to get involved in? Now, it's not the full answer, but it's just already sort of taking the blinkers off and seeing that there are other opportunities, you know, short term or medium term. Also, as I said before, within the NHS, there's more than just IAPT. IAPT is the main provider, but we have secondary care and we have tertiary care. Now, I used to work in a tertiary care service when I was course director, and I had to keep my clinical skills up for accreditation. I had an honorary contract at Queen's Medical Centre in the Department of Psychological Medicine. And that department saw people with quite complex presentations with medically unexplained symptoms and very sort of hard to treat health anxiety and long-term conditions. So there are other services as well where psychological therapies are offered, and that might be a, tier 4, for example, psychology services. And as I say, there's a growing trend for non-mental health services like palliative care and other specialities, cancer, where CBT is being used in these settings. Now, of course, some conditions might apply in terms of your background, but it's just opening our eyes to seeing that it's more than just this or this. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so moving on, I did ask this question earlier, but is there more than clinical leadership? Now, I have alluded to the answer being yes here, but but there isn't, in my opinion, a very clear career structure in place. And that's not just in IAPT. I believe that there's very scanty little bit of information about CBT, considering it is such a highly skilled profession. It's gaining momentum, and it is the principal psychological therapy provided in the NHS. And it shocks me, and always has, that there aren't more options available. Because if we compare CBT therapists careers to some of the core professions we might have come from. So I come from a nursing background. I trained as a learning disability nurse in the 1980s. And if you think about nursing, for example, there are very clear career pathways, and same in OT. I've done my bit of sort of research, and other professions like social work as well. There are sort of like different pathways you can follow, which do lead to career progression, i.e. promotion, because that's what we're talking about, aren't we? So over the last few years, I've been sort of like trying to think more about trying to create a model really that can, is based on these other healthcare professions, just to open our eyes to some possible pathways. So this is my model, and I will talk you through it. And it's quite timely, actually, because next month, in CBT Today, there will be an article with this model, showcased. Now, I call it the ARD model. And the A stands for attraction. I feel that it's, in order to maintain and grow the workforce, I believe that it has to start with attraction into the profession. And in my opinion, that could be even at A-level stage. I think people who are, young people who are studying, who are passionate about psychology, we get a big swathe of people going and doing psychology degrees, but it would be my vision to get them to consider doing a core profession at that point in time, because if they did that, they would get all of that wonderful psychology knowledge, but it would be applied, and they would have a career ready-made and fit to purpose. They wouldn't be joining these millions of psychology graduates who then have to do bits of pieces to get a patchwork quilt together of experience to then get into PWP work. Does that make sense? So I think attraction, whether it is as far back as A-levels and or not, some people want a career change and they just don't know how to get into CBT. But I do believe that we need to prepare the service to receive such diverse sets of people. As has been mentioned earlier, it is a little bit of a sort of conveyor belt type approach at the moment, isn't it? There's a certain pathway, and you feel sort of a little bit sort of on a track. But actually, if we think at even at the attract stage, there are more audiences out there who might want to actually penetrate the system. And that's where, when we think about, KSA and things like that, there are, people from different backgrounds who could actually come into an IAP service and get some of the experience they need in order to take that next step. So attract, and that might, but the attraction might also be somebody in the existing service, a PWP, and the service actually supporting their growth. Now, I don't know about all of you or any of you who have been through or going through that PWP transition to high intensity, or what your services are like, because I know the attitudes have varied in different services. So I know there was a trend a few years ago where, you know, people weren't really being supported because the service wanted to retain them in the PWP role as long as possible. But whereas there are other services that acknowledge that a lot of PWPs will want to make this career move. So just plan that into your system and have a flow of PWPs coming through and sort of plan for that transition after 2 years. Does that make sense? So we've got the attraction. So and part 2 of the model is about supporting people once they are during their training, because of course, if we're talking about attrition from IAP services, that includes experienced CBT therapists who then you might not have the same sort of expertise to help you through as a trainee, and that can be a real issue. Or people who lack experience or even enthusiasm to support students. And so even at that level, there can be difficulties, can't there? I think it can be a bit of a lottery as to how good the support is. And so the R then is for retention. Once you have trained within a service or you've entered a service, it's important that you feel like you want to stay there, isn't it? Not be held, you know, to ransom. So the retention bit, I think, is about providing quality training provision to retain. I think, again, that's been missing. You get your mandatory stuff, often delivered by people who aren't that interested, and that's not a pleasant experience. Tick box training. I'm not speaking for all, you know, I say I do hold my own opinions. I know that they are my opinions, but I have seen it in various services where there has been a little bit of a paucity or a lip service to training for various reasons. So we've got the A and the R, and the D, I believe, is the bit we're talking about here, is this. We want, once the person is in the service and you're qualified and you're doing that work for the service and helping people, then you need to actually develop the therapist, not just retain them. Does that make sense? And this is the bit that I am mirroring from other professions, where yes, this is probably the most sort of like popular pathway, that when you are in a system, that you might want to, you know, a lot of people want to just remain in a clinical role, and that's absolutely fine. But I think services should develop more specialities or make, you know, clinical practice, you know, sort of developmental in that sense, so that you are growing. And I'm talking very sort of broadly here, because I do know there are some excellent services who do offer those opportunities. So specialities and clinical supervision, you know, that keeps you in the clinical forum, doesn't it? So that's probably one of the most popular, as is the leadership role, as I talked about before. In order to get from a band 7 to band 8A in the NHS, we're talking, obviously. Then line management is one of the main roles. But I think, you know, mentoring other colleagues and across different models of therapy, and, you know, between teams, is another role that the leadership could be, you know, sort of extended to just case management. Does that make sense? And make that more attractive to people as a career option, in my opinion. We've got research here because actually IAPT is very research heavy. It's evidence-based, remember? So, you know, we have to keep on top of all of that. And that means that there normally are little pots of money here and there where, you know, it's possible to do some innovative stuff, or you can look for it. I know this sounds like hard work, but if you've got good links in your communities to for example, the higher education institutions around you that might provide the training for your trainees, have a look and see if there are any local projects where a CBT therapist's input might be helpful, and feed that back to your line manager and sort of like just be creative. Ask that. My message here is about asking rather than waiting for the opportunities to fall in your lap. You know, make the opportunities happen. They won't always, but you keep looking for them. Does that make sense? And then finally, but really important, I believe, and it's a big part of the model, in my opinion, is education is another area that as CBT therapists, you know, some people are, like myself, are really passionate about education and training. And I do believe that IAPT miss a trick by not really growing their own internal trainers. And in the article, that's something that I allude to, that would be such a, a useful thing for the commissioners to think about, because internal training is really hard to manage and procure, and often if it's done externally, it's extremely expensive. So it makes sense to offer an 8A to an internal person to oversee the training needs of the organization. So that's a lot, I know. But, you know, if you want to, you know, at this point, let's just take the slides off. I'm aware of time, but we are absolutely fine for time. So any comments? Let me see if I've missed anything in the chat at all. And or do you want to, you know, take your microphones off and you know, say what your initial reflections are on that? I know it's a conceptual model. I'm not going to suggest that it would be easy just to go and ask your managers to give you an opportunity, but you know, it has to be top down and bottom up, if that makes sense. And that's why I think I'm hoping that even if there aren't any commissioners here, I've recorded it and I want to get it out there, because and the article is part of that mission to get services to be more flexible, really. Even if they can't afford to give promotions, actually a variety of roles can also be very, you know, effective in retaining people. Does that make sense then, all of that? I know it might sound like a wish list, but what are people's sort of like initial reactions to it?
It's a useful information to me. But however, I am in a treatment, drug and alcohol treatment service, not in CBT services or ITEB. So at this present, I'm looking for a way to move into.
Yeah, that's the attract bit. That's the attract. And although
but it's very useful for me. At least I have the idea.
Well, let me add a little bit more in, because your question is specific to the attract part of it, isn't it? So that's where self-funded places are an element of that. I think that organizations should actually attract people over and above the actual funded places, because there are a lot of people who may fall short on a couple of the items, but if they do the training and they're supported by the organization who knows what the minimum training standards are for the BABCP, it makes perfect sense then to grow your own, if not holding people to ransom again, saying that you have to stay in the service, but actually if a service has been good to you, you might actually be more likely to want to stay, aren't you? So
That's
yes,
right.
there are more to it. I mean, this is just a very quick sort of whistle stop, really, and it's a thought-provoking, hopefully, session to get you to go away and sort of like think about stuff a bit more. So I'm sorry if that doesn't answer your question specifically.
No, it does. Honestly speaking, it does.
Oh, good.
It does.
So any more sort of comments or thoughts or reactions to what we've what I've presented so far?
I was gonna say, yeah, I think it's I really do like how it's outlined, and it's a great reminder in terms of you talk about education, research, because sometimes you can only kind of think of going down one path, the clinical path, but it's good to, be able to expand that. And I think you're so right that IAPT is kind of maybe missing a trick there, towards education and that. So yeah, I think it's a really good model. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. There's more to come. Let's get the last few slides up because I'm aware of the time. I feel like I'm speed dating now. So let's get the slides back up. So, moving on from this model, because it is a concept, but it's still designed to get you to think, and also remember you are in the driving seat, or you can be more than you perhaps think you are, because that's the message, like I say, I would like you to take away, is that you can always ask, explore, or try and make things happen yourself. And that's sort of what I like to do. The other important thing here is that to maintain your identity across any of these transitions, whatever decision you make, which we know comes with a lot of uncertainty. Hence the question mark there, because wherever you've come from, whatever part you are on your journey, the worst thing that can happen is being trapped in a role where you feel that you aren't being authentic to yourself. And I know that's a very common concern of people who do end up leaving a large service. I know we're talking mainly about IAPT here, but that can happen in any large organization. It happened to me in higher education as well, where, actually values started to change in the system and they no longer matched my own. And so it's important that whatever decision we make, or if we stay in a situation, that we think about our own identity and what it is that's important to us. And we say this all the time to our patients, don't we? Live by your values, but I want to get you to think about that as well. It is so important. So this is often what presents the ethical or moral dilemmas for us when we do have to make those big decisions. Do I stay or do I go? But by the end of this, I'm going to say you can do it all. You can do both or none. But living by your values is extremely important, because that is what's going to keep your resilience going, and also just feed yourself in terms of being able to come away from the job, even if it's been a really tough day, and feel that you haven't compromised too much. I mean, it's not a perfect world. We all have to sort of do things that don't match our values exactly. But I think, go away and really consider that in more detail, because it's a big issue, isn't it? So if we're thinking about the values compass, then we are talking about employment. We know that's only part of our lives, but it's a big part, clearly, and it is often associated with financial security. So that's often the first thing that we have to consider. Is it viable to stay? Is it viable to go into private practice? But these tend to be the two main things that drive us. But if I really want you to think about your aspirations, because that's got to give you the the nourishment to stay in a role or aspire to moving, and whatever that takes. So thinking, okay, I'm here now, I'd like to be over here. What do I need to do? Yes, I might have to persevere in a role that doesn't fulfill me at the moment, but having the aspiration is really important. Not letting go of your dreams, you know, because there are opportunities out there, and you can make those opportunities happen if they're not already there. So what I'm saying is, don't wait for it to land on your lap or for the organization to change. We can make that change. We can make our own working lives more flexible. And I can say that with some certainty, because that's what I've done. So, and that's a bit I really want to kind of share with you. So keep your goals, keep your dreams, keep your career aspirations going. And it is all about flexibility, not falling into the all or nothing, black and white sort of, you know, it's either full-time here or full-time there. Mix it up, you know, choose the elements that you enjoy and that you value, and then ask yourself, how can I get those elements in a weekly, you know, in a weekly job, you know, Monday to Friday? What would it take? What would that role look? What would it look like? And how can I explore these options? And I like to think of myself as a CBT entrepreneur. I would never go on The Apprentice, though, to say. But it's about thinking creatively. We can use our skills. We can still, I personally really value working in the public sector, but I do have a part-time business, Moya CBT, which, you know, I have deliberately chosen to make it more career, you know, consultation focused, but I do still see patients, and I still do other roles, clinical supervision and training and events like this. But they're the bits that, you know, I wanted in my private practice. And so we can think creatively and then think about how we can get those bits. I personally, like I say, do value working in public services, but not in a full-time position. Definitely not, because I know that stress would be too much for me. But I do really value working in a team, and working by myself in private practice is not for me full-time. I'm a people person. I like to be around a team. And so I value the NHS, I value, you know, local authority, and I value teams. So, but I also value the flexibility and creativity that a private practice can afford you. So what I'm saying is, you know, you think about those elements that you're wanting and see what that could look like. So I'm a big fan and a promoter of what I call, and I haven't made this term up, portfolio working. So that means just what I've been talking about here, which is to anchor yourself in, you know, different roles, really, but actually they don't have to be completely, you know, it's not all or nothing. So I've put this this slide up to show you, because actually my working week has changed since this slide was made back in August, you know, a bit prior to August. So I think I said I was in higher education. Then 4 years ago, I immersed myself back into an IAP service as a full-time clinician. I wanted to get back on the coal face and get some, you know, get those bread and butter skills really up, and you know, sort of get the credibility back, really, to be in it rather than talk about it. And I loved it, actually, but it was very stressful, clearly. But I always had the plan that I would eventually move on or do other things. And actually, when lockdown occurred, that's when I actually started my private business. So I was still working full time as a CBT therapist at Trent PTS, but I condensed my hours. So I created a space in my week to do 1 day a week for Moya CBT and build it up gradually. And then I just kept reducing hours each year from my IAP service. And then earlier this year, in January, I joined a mental health support team at Nottingham City Council, because that provided a placement for me to do my PG cert in CBT for children and adolescents. So I approached them. I've got I do get paid, but it's like on a casual basis. So, you know, currently I'm still working there, even though the course is finished. So that gives me variety. And I just approached them and, and offered my services. So, you know, what I'm saying is that's the message. You know, if you have, you know, aspirations, dreams, it's not all black and white. So this was a crafted week where, you know, during the majority of the week I'm in my private practice, but that involves lots of different roles. But I still work at Nottingham City Council 1 day a week. Well, it's gone down to half a day now, because I'm looking at because Trent PTS finished in August, but my role changed. I went to the director and offered, you know, my experience of being a trainer, and there was a little pot of money which created a 1 day a week position to deliver internal training. So again, it's just about, if you don't ask or make a business case, you'll never know whether that is possible. So now I'm looking for, because I'll always want a part-time position to go alongside. I don't want to be in private practice full time. That's just my own preference, you know. Maybe when I'm retired, I'll just do a little bit here and there. That's the idea. But I just wanted to share that with you to show that, you know, it is possible to mix it up and to, you know, and nothing is set in stone. So some people think when they go into private practice, that's it, you know, that is it. But it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't. I mean, the year when I worked the most in private practice, yes, financially, I probably earned a little bit more than I would in an employed position. But to be honest with you, that isn't the thing that motivates me the most. And also, having ADHD, all the organizational side of things is you know, can be quite, you know, another issue for me. I quite like to be told what to do sometimes, believe it or not, in a job. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, because that's pretty much all of the slides I have. For these final few minutes then, which I think we've got 5 minutes, which is just nice. That was timed really quite well, I think, to open the floor and get you to, you know, share any reflections or any thoughts. So let's have a look at what's on the chat. So we've got Becca, who said, worth thinking about third wave therapies such as ACT and compassion focused therapy that go well alongside CBT. Also, IAP uses EMDR now, which is, yeah, is a wonderful therapy. So absolutely, that shows another development, doesn't it? That, you know, and I know in Trent PTS, they were particularly good at providing quite diverse training opportunities. And, you know, they're by no means exclusive. I think there is a recognition that, you know, we do need a variety of different approaches, not or augmentative approaches. So that's a really good point. Any other comments or questions, or what are your take-home messages, I guess, from this?
Can I just say, I just want to thank you for sharing that, because it's put me at ease, I guess. I already work within an IAP service, so newly qualified. Yeah. So I just wanted to say it's put, I think just knowing what my options are, and I guess that sense of not feeling stuck and being aware of, you know, what else is out there. So I like how you talked about incorporating our values and thinking about how we could expand, really. And I like the idea of I think you called it the portfolio, and
Yes.
thinking about the different, I actually like that in terms of the flexibility and in terms of just being able to bring our values to mind and thinking about how we can be flexible in the approach. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you for that. That's really good to hear, that, you know, that this space has allowed you an opportunity to take the step back and think about the bigger picture, which is hard when you're in it, isn't it?
Yeah. It almost feels like you're on this, what do you call it? I just envision sort of a hamster on this wheel.
Yes, on the Ferris wheel, on the wheel. Yes, it can absolutely feel like that, can't it?
Yeah. So it's put me at ease, and I just, I like that concept, and I like the idea, the plan that you shared earlier on. And I do agree there needs to be, I think, a lot of emphasis or focus on, I think, the development part post-qualification, I think, and the education part post-qualification, because I do feel that maybe that's a bit that's missing as well. Yeah,
you've got to be inspired, haven't you, when you're in the role, really, or else it can become, like you say, just being on the wheel.
Yeah. But no, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
You're very helpful.
Good. Any other comments before we finish?
Yeah, I'm really in support of what Ruwa said. You really give me the confidence and the more opportunity to know what I'm doing and to be able to ask, as you said. Ask.
If you don't ask, you don't get. They may never have thought about it, and that's what
exactly.
I do.
That's right. Yeah, you're
it's
right.
A job.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, it is definitely something I want you to go away and do. Make it happen, you know. Brilliant. Well, you know, we've got one more minute, but I'm hoping that, because I'm going to actually post the 2 sessions online, I'm really hoping that some organizations and commissioners see it, because we want it to be, like I say, top down and bottom up, so that everybody's actually working together to, you know, provide more flexible pathways within. It's not even about staying full time in a IAP service, is it? I truly believe there should be way more flexibility in the hours that people do. So thanks, Michelle. So, you know, offering a lot more part-time positions, and so then you could then use 2 days to do a course that, you know, you might want to do, or set up in private practice little by little, rather than feeling like you have to make that big decision. So yeah, the flexible working hours, I think, is critical to making your job feel, you know, more aligned to your values.
Thanks so much, Helen. It's been really good for me to kind of have this as a get together as well with people outside of my self-employment bubble. So I really appreciate it. And it's just a good reminder for me about the kind of mixing things up. So yeah, much appreciated.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Well, thank you for coming on this Friday evening. It's been lovely. And, you know, if you're not already, there's the CBT Careers Facebook group, you know, you can always ask questions there, and there's a community there. But yeah, I'll be putting on one of my therapist coffee mornings, coffee afternoons on soon as well, because that was something I did through lockdown. But it's nice when you are working independently to just have a forum like this, just to touch base with people. So I'll definitely set something up.
Great.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, and I think you know where to find me if you want to. But yeah, thanks. Okay,
I will definitely find you.
Okay, lovely. Take care then, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.